and then the period you participated in PVille and the jobs that you had.
So I'm Bardia. I'm an elder now, but I used to be in period 6 last year before I guess, the dark ages. I used to be a DOT, Director of Technology, and I used to just be active within the community of the pavilions.
And then what is the fondest memory that you have from PVille?
The funnest?
The funnest, the fondest, the best
Um,
lesson, whatever.
One of the important lessons I learned though was when when he smashed the grape, or King P smashed the grapes when he was trying to tell us that, like, if you mess around with any of the students or you trying to mess around with Pville, like, I'm gonna crush you. And then he literally did crush some grapes in front of us. So I think that was a very valuable lesson that was, like, very much needed.
And like you said, we went into a dark age.
Yeah.
Because of COVID and everything. So, how did that dark age kind of affect your PVille experience?
So the dark age was very, I guess you could say, complicated, because it wasn't easy for anyone, the teachers, the King P, even the pavilions, anyone. And before that, it was fun. It was very, I guess you could say, very understanding, very valuable lessons getting learned. But after the dark ages, or during the dark ages, things were just not how they were, and there are just big changes coming without so little time for adjustments, and people weren't prepared enough. So I feel like if we were maybe possibly prepared more, we would have been good during the dark ages, but it was an unexpected event.
And then on March 13th was obviously our last day in person. Do you remember anything from that day, like people talking about anything?
I didn't come to school that day actually, but the day before, I remember on March 12th where I came to school, and before I left, like, everyone was saying how COVID is approaching, and we might have to go home, and it was supposed to even be like a 1 or 2 week thing apparently, and then it lasted, like, it's still lasting. So, like, yeah, I guess you could say it was very fun and memorable beforehand, but when it occurred, it was just starting to turn into something unexpected for everyone.
And we then had to switch to, like, online learning and stuff.
Correct.
So how did the online learning stuff kind of help you appreciate the in-person things, and how did you take that into, obviously, now your senior year?
I think the online school or online teaching was very difficult, because it doesn't give you the same experience as in on hand work, like in person, and, like, a lot of the lessons for PVille is meant to be in front of you, that you can see, witness it, and experience it within the pavilions. And doing that online is very, very hard, because you don't get to see everyone's reaction, you don't get to feel the emotions, anything, you know what I'm saying? So it's just, it wasn't the same, but I guess it was okay.
And then why do you think it's important that future students remember March 13th and remember this kind of dark age?
I think it's important because before then, not everyone was grateful of what they had at school. Everyone was always like, oh my God, I'm waking up to go to another day of school. But that day clearly showed everyone how valuable in-person school is, and just being able to go in person and be social, learn, education, and all of that. And in my opinion, like, if we never had the dark ages, things would be very, very much different right now, and especially for the future pavilions. But I trust the future pavilions. We have elders, we have DODs, we have pavilions all across the world nowadays. So, like, we try to help each other.
And then lastly, what's one piece of advice that you have for future pavilions?
My advice would be, don't take it too seriously, but don't think it's like it's a joke either. At the same time, like, treat this like how you would expect your government to be treated, and care for it, and actually be there, participate, and you need to be involved within the community. You can't just sit here and say, I want to become something, and don't work for it. You need to be there. You need to work with the pavilions. You need to work with the King P and with King P, and just work with everyone and make sure you're doing everything the right way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, state your name, the period you were in for PVL, and the positions you held or any roles that you had.
Hi, my name's Hannah Cho, and I was a Supreme Council meeting member of Period 3. Um, yeah, about that.
And what was the fondest memory that you had from PVL, or like the most interesting lesson, or the thing that you liked the most about it?
I suppose the one thing I did find fun in Keyville was everything that was happening. If I, there were times when like the fish fiasco and like the creation of bills that I was part of. Like there were a couple of culture committee bills that I was a part of that I enjoyed writing and working a little bit on. I never really got to do anything from those culture bills, so I suppose that's the most saddest part about it. But I did enjoy what I worked on in Beville.
And then what would you say like you gained the most out of that out of PVL?
I suppose the one thing I did learn from Beville was thoughtfulness. Like, there's multiple different ways to think about something, and I never really took it to heart until I took this class and I got myself involved with PVille and tried to make contributions. Yeah.
And obviously our year got cut short. And on March 13th, everything kind of
Shut down.
shut down. So, do you remember anything about that day, or like any of the gossip that was going
I
around?
remember because my dad talked extensively about COVID and the fact that no, this is not going to last 2 weeks and it's probably going to last all the way till summer until next year. He was right, but technically we went on for until even now. So I suppose that it was kind of the year I started really talking to my family a lot. And other than that, that day I do remember talking to a couple of other friends about doing this hangout and like, and then I told them no, I don't think I can do it because I have to write something for PVille. I had to write one of the bills I had to create like a rules slide, so I never got to really do anything about that. So
And then obviously everything kind of shut down, and we had to start online learning and online stuff. So how did that switch kind of affect your PVL experience in a way you like participated and perceived that experience?
I tried to get myself more involved, but it's hard to get yourself involved when it's just the slide presentations. I did like the one project we did about World War II, and I got to contribute with some other people from other periods and like writing a script and filming the video. I did enjoy doing that, but yeah, I feel like I kind of diminished after that.
And then how did all of that online learning kind of affect you, and how you went into, obviously now you're a senior, and it's a very different environment, sitting in a senior class and sitting in a sophomore class. So how did PVille and the dark age and the online learning kind of affect you, and how you participated in school now?
I'd say it affected me in a way where I started to kind of look at my time and think about what I can do and how it's going to affect me later on. I think that's when I really started trying to do better in school and learn how to do things, because back then it was just like I just wanted to get all A's and then like get courses done, and I didn't want to take AP tests because it just like I didn't like taking tests in general. But I think from here I started kind of like trying to participate more. Yeah.
And then why do you think it's important that future students remember like days like March 13th and remember these kinds of historical moments?
You don't know what happens. Like, you don't know what happens. Like you can, like look at the world as it is right now, and you'll be able to know what happens later on. But if you can't grasp that idea, then you can't really go forward.
Reflecting on your 10th grade years, COVID just started, and there was this period of time when, like, Mo, you, Tristan would go along on Zoom at night. What was going through your mind as far as, like, wow, like, education, where are we headed, and because it was so different. Were you sad, mad, was it exciting, was it becoming depressing? And what was, like, really quick, like, what were you thinking at, not, like, oh my God, it's like 10 o'clock at night, we're on Zoom, and this, so if you could just share, because that's kind of insightful, because, like, 5, 10 years from now, kids are just not they're gonna be like, what? You did what? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you could talk about that experience a little. And maybe anything that you remember, that one time.
I remember being really depressed, honestly, because that was when I started losing touch with a lot of people I thought were really close friends with me. And I was kind of like contemplating a lot of things during that time, but then like I just kind of like I got into like that mentality of, okay, I need to do good in school, I need to get these good grades, I need to do this, I need to do that. I got back into that kind of mentality until like I think like March, when after the third time I did those 10 p.m. Zoom calls. And I remember just kind of like going into bed and just like kind of like staring at the ceiling and staying awake basically all night, and then occasionally looking at my phone. And I just remember that like you can't really have everything, and you just kind of have to make the best you can. Like, what do I want to do for my time here? Because I have enough time to help out with Pville, but I also have enough time to do well in school, but I also have enough time to like talk to people. And that's when I started kind of like kind of reconnecting with people I never thought I would be friends with today. And I even found somebody I really liked that I got together with. So yeah.
Is it kind of like weird happenstance that they call it, where a bad or weird situation leads to something great or happy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I split up from a friendship that I don't regret, but at the same time I realized I've kind of been like a little too focused on.
Mm-hmm.
And like that person wouldn't talk to me during that time, and so I kind of just split off from there.
Good learning experience, yeah. And then, okay, so just one piece of advice that you have to future students who will sit in this classroom.
Pay attention. There's a lot of things in this class that you may not truly understand, but like maybe one day you won't might like look back specifically in the class, but like you'll think about like things that are happening right now or things that are going to happen later, and just change based on that. So you're not going to always stay stagnant. I've never met a stagnant person in my life, especially after this time. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, if you could just state your name and your period and your previous position.
I'm Jessica Yamashiro, former DOD of Period 4.
And what are a few words that pop into your mind when you think of Pville?
I'd say life-changing. That's like the main one, but I guess life-changing, fun, just overall an experience.
And if you only had one sentence to describe the entirety of what Pville is, what would that sentence be?
I've thought of this.
Mm-hmm.
Hard, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's an experience that only a privileged few can have.
And what is your fondest memory, or like the best lesson, or the most important lesson that you think, or that you took away from this experience?
People overall, I think, really has the ability to help you recognize things that not only apply to not only apply to like the classroom but also everywhere else. So everything that you're dealing with, like whether it's stock or having to lead a society, it kind of all translates into the real world. And I think that's just so helpful, and it definitely should be utilized by a lot more people.
And do you think that's like the purpose of this whole experience, like to inspire to inspire the younger generation, or what do you think is like the sole purpose of this whole, I guess, experiment?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely to help people realize there are so many issues in the world and that they can be fixable, and it's going to take a lot of, work from a mass group of people. But any issues that you face in people, it's definitely prevalent in the real world, and just being able to utilize all the kind of tricks or all the lessons you've learned from the class and being able to apply it to everything that's happening.
On the topic of life-changing experiences, obviously we just passed March 13th, which was the start of the Dark Age. So what do you recall from that day, March 13th, 2020?
Nothing really specific, more of I remember a lot of people saying, oh, did you see the email in class about how we're gonna be off for a couple of weeks? I think a lot of us were hoping that we would be back, or we kind of thought it was a bit useless just because it was also close to spring break. So everyone was like, why don't we just get 3 weeks off, right before spring break? And it was a bit on the down low. I feel it wasn't really that intense of a situation at the time, but little did we know it would take up 2 years of our life.
And how did that period of Dark Age impact your PVEL experience?
I was definitely a little sad when it happened because a lot of the lessons just weren't the same, and I know we missed a lot of lessons that were mentioned at the beginning of the year or when we did the recap kind of slideshow. But we tried our best to work with what we had, but it was definitely different and a lot less interactive, a lot less what I was hoping for.
And did you try to continue PVEL in any way, or was there any continuation of projects or ideas or?
Hayden tried really hard to keep kind of competitions going with online games, but that didn't really work out. But a lot of times we did try to keep up with different council meetings held on Zoom or just voting online. We also had a lot of meetings just in general with Mr. P. I remember we would have Zoom calls at 10 o'clock at night just talking about random topics or whatever we learned in class. So at least that aspect of discussion and being able to share your thoughts with people was preserved. But otherwise, a lot of things were kind of lost.
And obviously because of the quarantine, we all had to do online learning. So how did online learning differ from the in-person learning, and how did you learn to cope with that, and did you learn to appreciate the normal interaction more?
Yeah, for sure. Especially with Mr. P's class, it's such an interactive class. It's such you get a lot of the learning done through visuals or through kind of the experience of what Mr. P is saying. So it's definitely harder being on Zoom and just kind of going over slideshows without really having a person in front of you kind of explaining everything, because a lot of stuff sticks with you, especially when things are acted out or when props are involved or when everybody is kind of being involved in the lesson rather than just viewing the lesson. So it was definitely a lot harder to kind of learn things, I guess. But yeah, it definitely made me appreciate his class in general, which why I'm glad that I'm a TA now, so that I can kind of re-experience everything and get to experience the lessons we didn't get.
And then why do you think it's important that we remember March 13th and all that kind of was left behind, but also all that sparked new opportunity? I
mean, obviously, it was a historical moment for us living through a pandemic, but for PVEL, it's it was said in the March 13th speech where it was it's not only a tribute to what we did and what past PVELians did, but it's also a tribute to the present ones who kind of were able to rediscover that magic of PVEL, who were able to kind of carry on that legacy, which would have like 2 years ago, it kind of would have been thought of as being lost, but they were able to keep it up and carry on the legacy through Pville, which can hopefully be helpful and beneficial to future pavilions.
And last question, just into the camera, what advice would you have for any future sophomores that are going to be coming into Pville?
Definitely cherish your time here because it does go by fast, and take every single thing you learn from this class and apply it to the real world, because it definitely opens your eyes and will lead you out of the cave.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, so state your name, period, and position.
So my name is Mohammed Sabai. I'm an elder of Period 4. I was the speaker of the council, and I was also Swen for daily announcements.
And what are a few words you would use to describe people, like that immediately pop into your mind when somebody says people?
I think of unusual, crazy, and enlightening.
And if you could describe Pville in just one sentence, no more, no less, what would you say?
I would say it is an unbelievable experience.
What is your fondest memory or story or the best lesson or the thing that pops out most to you when you think about Pville?
So the two things I can think about the most are the fish fiasco, which was a funny time. Everyone was going crazy about the fish, and it was just so funny because it was so out of the blue. And then the Glipley lesson, which is the last lesson we took and had before people, obviously ended because of COVID. Had an impactful message about war, and it was the best way to go out.
And Pville is obviously a very impactful experience. And what do you think the purpose of it? What do you think it gives to students?
I feel like it's so hard to pinpoint a purpose in terms of Pville, but one thing that it for sure taught me is to just always keep an open mind and always, the answer is always in front of you. You just have to see it, and that's the major things that it taught me.
And so in terms of March 13th, what is your last memory? Like, what is the thing that you recall about that last day?
So that last day, I was in Mrs. Rivera's class. It was my Earth and Space Science class. I left it, and I saw emails going off about COVID and stuff like that, and I was like, wow, like what's happening? We might not be back for 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, 2 weeks isn't that bad. And then I remember the lesson at Mr. P's class, the Glipley lesson, and I just remember walking out that classroom and I was like, wow, like this might be the last time I see this, this room again. So yeah.
And after March 13th, we went into a dark age. So how did that dark age impact your Pville experience or your passion for it or the way you perceived it?
It for sure deterred it a lot. I was so bummed out that I couldn't get to finish Pville in its entirety. And it definitely put my mood down. So I just had to work through that junior year and just try to make the best out of I can out of Zoom.
And did Pville continue in any way, or did it stop immediately? And how did you feel about that continuation or non-continuation?
Oh man, Pville never ends. Even when I wasn't there, I still felt Pville was with me. So after everything it taught me, it still lived on with me. And I still took those things and applied it to my life. So in my sense, it never really ended for me.
And how did online learning, because obviously after the dark age we had to do everything remotely, what lessons did it teach you, and how did it teach you to appreciate, or did it teach you to appreciate?
It taught me that I can't take these things for granted. Like being online, it's cool because it's more convenient, it's just obviously more fun and things go into my schedule, but being in a classroom filled with people and being able to interact and communicate face to face is just so valuable and so precious, and I think I for sure appreciated that aspect a lot more.
And we just passed March 13th, so why do you think it's important that future Pavilions remember that day, March 13th, 2020?
I want future Pavilions to know that don't take people for granted, because even if we did have it for 6-7 months, it went away, and we didn't get to finish it out in its entirety. And I feel like those couple months could have been so much, so valuable to have and experience, as a sophomore. And I want people to appreciate it while they can every single day, because it can get taken away from you right away. As you can see, sophomore year got taken away just like that. So appreciate it.
Yeah. And then into the camera, just one piece of advice you have for any incoming sophomores that will be in Mr. P's class in future years.
Wow. Okay. A piece of advice I'd give to future sophomores is to take a look at yourself, and I want you to be able to analyze yourself and see that you're worth so much and you can do so much with your life, and that anybody, and I mean anybody, is capable of doing great. I came from Hawthorne. I came from a bad school. I came from a place that wasn't so keen on developing, you know, free thinkers and people that can, you know, do so much. And to be in this classroom changed everything for me. And I want you guys to realize that this change can happen at any time, and you guys should make it if necessary. And I want everyone to be able to succeed and just live a happy life. And whatever happy means to you, I want you to live it.
Awesome. Cool.
Thank you.
There we go.